Well, I don't know if my internet's being down. That might be great. Worst case scenario, I'll just do it just audio.
All right, what happened to your video?
I don't know. I have no idea. I'm gonna try.
All right, well, I think
You can hear me though, right?
yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if I have to go just audio, that's fine. I have no idea what happened to the video.
What happened to your camera?
I have no idea. I'm gonna try to unplug it and plug it back in.
All right, so we got a couple people live already. Hey there, everybody.
Hello, everybody. 1 second. Just having a brief technical difficulty, but I'm going to start with no video. This is about Roman anyways, so that's okay. Roman, if you don't mind unsharing. Thank you. Okay, sorry everyone for that brief technical difficulty. Thank you everyone for joining us for Beyond the Bottom Line, Pre-Sales Success on Your Terms with Roman Mezhevovsky. My name is Alex Zawakowski. I'm on the sales team here at Consensus, and I will be your moderator for today's session. DemoFest is presented by Consensus. Consensus is leading the world into the new era of demo automation. Our platform gets your buyers what they need when they need it. It then multiplies your revenue team's impact with unique insights on those buyers. As a result, you'll see faster close times, larger deals, and higher close rates. You can learn more by going to our website or viewing the automated micro demo, which I highly recommend. We just made a new one at the link in the Docs tab on the right of your screen. We encourage you to participate in today's session. On the right side of your console, you can see a few ways to engage with us. Roman actually has a very creative way of engaging. I've never seen anything like it before, so just a little plug for that. The chat function, if you haven't been to any of these yet, will allow you to engage with us as well as other attendees. Roman will be taking questions at the end, so please write them down or put them into the Q&A. We encourage you to put them into the Q&A box or save them for the end, whatever makes the most sense. If you are having any technical difficulties like I am, head to the gear on the bottom of your screen, and you will see a help document to help troubleshoot the common issues. And now for Roman. He's a seasoned pre-sales professional with a passion for developing a framework to allow him to do his best work and sharing that framework with others. With experience spanning startups to tech giants like Google and Netflix, Roman's career has been marked by prioritizing personal impact and work satisfaction, even when those choices come with financial trade-offs. He's a strong advocate for understanding your individual drivers of success within the pre-sales landscape. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Roman. And before I do so, I'm sorry my face isn't showing. I did want to say, last week, Roman and I were talking, and I couldn't help but notice the fresco or the paintings behind him. And I really loved why he has us hanging on those walls. So I wanted to kind of warm him up by letting him share what those paintings are and what they mean for him and how they can apply to this session.
Thanks, Alex. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Yeah. So as we were talking with you, I do have this beautiful painting behind me. I think in the centerpiece you can't really see it behind me, but this is called the School of Athens. It really depicts something that I think actually is relevant to this talk. So coincidentally, or maybe not, it basically depicts two people in the middle there, Aristotle on one side and Plato on the other. One of them is Plato reaching to the sky. The other one is Aristotle reaching towards the viewer. And I think, as we were talking about this, I think we kind of, it's an interesting back and forth in terms of where sort of knowledge, where does one sort of identify with. And I think we were talking about, sort of that reaching towards the viewer as a sign of, knowledge and sort of wisdom coming from within. So anyways, that's just a little bit of that. I encourage everybody to go look it up. It's called, again, the School of Athens. Really interesting, kind of thought-provoking picture. So yeah, we can get started with that. Alex, is there anything else that you wanted to say?
No, just looking forward to the session. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Okay. So Alex did a quick introduction about me, but I've been doing sales engineering mostly as an individual contributor for the last 15 years. And I've had the opportunity to coach and be kind of a team lead for other SEs. But really, I love being an individual contributor, thinking about it, and just being part of the SE community in general. So thank you for Consensus, and happy to be part of this Demo Fest. I really spanned, when I sat down to write kind of this little about me, I did start in smaller companies, and sort of as I figured out my career trajectory did sort of evolve into medium and then now large size company, the biggest one being here at Google Cloud more specifically. And I think the reason I brought that up, I thought it was interesting, again, the different challenges, the different opportunities, the different ways to reflect on those different company sizes and how the SE role is different, right? So we are all sales engineers or pre-sales sort of adjacent, but depending on the company or even working as a vendor, as a SaaS solution, what are you selling, what your company is selling, right? Or now selling cloud, very different hats you have to wear. The role is the same, right? Or the title is the same, but just different reflections on kind of depending on what the company does and the size. On a more personal note, I do have 2 kids, 2 cats. I live out here in beautiful Denver, Colorado. So, if you're ever in town skiing in the winter or whatnot in the summer, please do hit me up. We'll have some contact information later on LinkedIn. Love to grab a drink with you. Just say hi and chat. So that's a little bit about me. Why this talk, right? So this is sort of a funny little picture that I'll explain in a second, but I'm sure that a lot of you have had different career style conversations with different managers, different SE leaders over the years. It kind of ranges from, what do you want to be when you grow up type of questions, right? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? This picture specifically is more of a reflection of what one of our later SE leaders asked us to do recently. He's like, try to find a sort of a figure or somebody famous that you can map yourself onto. And so I created this picture as a little bit of a satire to kind of map myself onto Elon Musk, if it's not obvious from this picture. But those kinds of thought experiments never really resonated with me. And so I always sort of found it lacking in some regards. And the reason is throughout my career, I always felt very reactive and always sort of reacting to different situations, not really having any clear principles or any sort of structure to understand myself, understand what are my drivers, what am I doing, something was externally changing the market, some hot company was popping, right? Everybody was running towards it. And I was facing these questions like, should I join that trend? Or maybe the reverse, right? The economy is cooling, people are getting laid off. Should I try, leave pre-sales and do something else, right? So that's reactivity. And I think when I started thinking about that, I realized that a lot of it is not having that structure behind to understand really myself and what are my drivers. So in a nutshell, I think this talk really was born from that journey, that sort of personal growth journey, thinking about how do I not just react to different situations, but how do I actually have structure? And I sort of put this in this concept of the best you, right? The best me. I want to be the best me. Obviously, each one of you wants to be the best you that you can be. And there's kind of my pitches, there's sort of these 2 parts to it. One is prioritizing. The other one is real success. And in other words, prioritizing, what I kind of look at it as is expanding energy to look at alternatives, first of all, and then choosing and act on an alternative. That to me is sort of prioritization. And then the other thing is defining, right? What is real success? What is success? What are your, KPIs, if you will, right? What are my long-term KPIs? And actually understanding those. So I think those 2 are the ingredients that really kind of help you and help me in my personal growth journey. So this talk is sort of focused on the how. My goal is to walk you through and encourage you really to develop your own framework. And I'm going to share my own framework that I've developed. I think that having a framework is that systematic, thoughtful approach is really the only way to introspect and have a plan for a long-term success, right? If you don't do that, then you're reactive. You're not knowing yourself. You're not proactive about it. Okay. So why a framework? I just said we need a framework, right? I want to go through a quick exercise. Alex, if you maybe help me put this link in the chat, but I do want you to engage with this, please. I think hopefully it'll make the point that I'm trying to make. Alex, yeah, if you can maybe drop this link in the chat for everybody, it'll help. Maybe in I don't know if this is the session or the public, whatever the right place is for the chat. So if you see that link, please go to this link, everybody watching. And if you can, engage with it. So what you'll see when you go there is you'll be asked to draw something. You'll have a empty drawing pad. Please go ahead and draw a bicycle, which is what the thing that is there asking you to do. So we'll take the next, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super fancy. Please go in and draw to the best of your ability in the next 15, 20 seconds, a bicycle. That'll be super helpful. And hopefully it'll illustrate the point that I'm trying to make. So I see a couple of responses coming in. Okay, cool, awesome. Let's take another, I don't know, 15 seconds or so while you guys do that. All right, I'm seeing a ton of responses. This is great. Okay, let's close it up in a couple of seconds here. All right, so what was the point of this, right? You might be thinking, okay, what's the point of this? Think about what you thought when you were going through this. So I said draw a bicycle. Obviously, everybody saw a bicycle, probably been on a bicycle. Was it difficult? Do you think you got it? Hopefully you didn't cheat and look it up, right? So what was the point here? Let's take actually a look at some of your responses. This is some of the responses. Okay, beautiful arts, probably not winning any awards, but I'm seeing some interesting stuff here. Okay, cool. So what's the point here, right? Let's take a look here. The point is that this experiment has been run. This is, it looks like, when I first saw this, that looks like something that a model, like an LLM would hallucinate when you asked it to generate a bicycle. These are not. These are actual, just like you drew sketches, right? People were asked to draw sketches of bicycle, and then an artist rendered them. And that's what they actually look like. None of them are correct, by the way. And you can go ahead and look up what a real bicycle looks like. Why is that the case, though? What is the point here? Even though everybody's been on a bicycle, you have a hard time because the way our brain works, it relies on abstractions, right? So a bicycle is an abstraction. It holds a lot of information in a single mental unit we call bicycle. The trade-off is that we forget some of the specifics behind the abstraction, right, to kind of lower that cognitive load, if you will. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is how is that important and how that's relevant if you think of sales engineering, right, as the bicycle. And granted, bicycle is a fairly simple entity, right? It's very, very simple in the way it's composed. If you go up and you look it up on Google Images right now, you'll probably see how simple it is. If you think of sales engineering, your career, right, success, much more complicated things, right? But also if you think of them just like the bicycle, they're abstractions, right? If you really think what they are, you maybe think of the different pieces of your sales engineering job. But I guarantee you that if you, just like with the bicycle example, sat down and tried to draw it without a very structured and focused energy, it will be fuzzy and it would not be maybe accurately representing how really things are coming together. So the point of having a framework, which is the whole kind of point that I'm trying to make here, is to make yourself break down these abstractions, to clarify that fuzziness, that all these things are floating in your head when you think, because thinking is not the clearest way of understanding the world or even understanding yourself, right? So if you're looking for long-term success, long-term happiness, you have to have that solid foundation and a grounded sort of framework-based approach. And the last sort of analogy I'll make before jumping into the framework is, again, you can think of this as like stocks, right? There's sort of two types of strategies. You either know your investments, you know your fundamentals, you research it, you understand exactly why you're sticking to them, even during downturns, right? Or you can gamble, really, right? You can jump on the latest fad. Something's crashing, you exit it. Something is hot, you're joining it, right? And hopefully that makes sense in terms of the analogy here with the career, right? Your career, again, you need to understand the fundamentals of your career and why you're sticking to them, and stick to them throughout the good times and the bad times, and evaluate constantly, just like you would with stocks. That way you're not swayed by or rocked by the latest fad or the industry kind of situation, the next hot thing. So hopefully this is convincing enough that it's important to clarify our thinking and understand the fundamentals to avoid being reactive and switch into more of a proactive approach. Okay, so what is the specifics here? These are the 5 things that I do, and the way that I think about it. It might not exactly map to you, so keep that in mind, and your situations can be different. The idea here, again, is to have a framework. This is what I use. Hopefully you find this useful. The first thing I think about when I think about an opportunity, a role, a specific situation is excitement, right? So for me, it's important to have something intellectually challenging and exciting. I want it to have an emotional impact that aligns with my personal passions. So for me personally, like I've been doing a lot of work in media and entertainment, and also, not surprisingly, I love music. I love music production just as a hobby in general. So everything I do in work I work with a lot of media related customers. It feels like there's a great sort of personal passion and alignment. Even the most boring day in the office, so to speak, it still feels like I'm working on something that is interesting and at least not as boring if it was something that was completely, unrelated or unexciting to me, right? So that's one way where you're genuinely curious about it, to not make yourself plateau, is to have that alignment. So that's one thing to look at, is excitement. The second thing I look at is impact. So impact is an interesting one because, again, people kind of use and abuse that term a lot. The way I look at impact is sort of thinking about it, the scale of your contribution, right? Will your work impact individual customers, the entire industry, create something new, right? Are you solving a significant problem? What is it that you want your scale of contribution to be? And remember, there's no right answer here. The example that I use here is the example of a doctor, a physician, right? So a physician, a doctor, right, sees one patient at a time. They're dealing with that's their customer. They're dealing with one patient at a time, and they're looking at their specific thing, and they're solving their specific problem. One patient, one customer at a time. Another kind of doctor, right, is somebody who's doing research, right? They're out there solving maybe a different scope of a problem, right? They're not necessarily dealing with individuals, maybe in studies or groups of cohorts, right? Both are doctors, you can say, right? But they have different scale of impact and contribution. And you can ask sort of this absurd question, like, which one is better? Well, is it better to be a researcher or be a physician? Well, I mean, there's no right answer, because you need both. You need somebody to look after and deal with individual customers, patients, right? You also want people doing research and pushing kind of the industry forward. So similar role, right? Similar sort of title, if you will, different scale of contribution. Which one is right for you? That is a question that you want to ask yourself. Is it customer to customer, whole industry, right? You want to fix things that are broken. You like creating new things. Just something to think about, again, when you're evaluating different opportunities. The other thing I think about is opportunities for collaboration. And collaboration, to me personally, is important. I like being part of an awesome team where I'm constantly kind of challenged by others. There's that back and forth. But that's not that's the only dynamic, just like with the doctor example, right? There's plenty of sales engineers or specific kinds of pods where you're working very independently, right? Maybe an example is somebody who's coding, and hopefully I'm not offending anybody, but coding is, as a software developer, you're maybe more siloed than a salesperson, right? And I was just talking to one of my sales counterparts, and she said to me, "Hey, I actually feel energized like talking to people. I feel like my batteries get recharged when I'm out there, like interacting with people, talking to people, right?" That's not necessarily the same for everybody, just how they're wired or how they want to be. So in terms of collaboration, being in front of people, participating, kind of bouncing ideas off of a group, What kind of group setting do you want? Do you want to be more siloed? That's not a bad thing, right? I mean, again, maybe you do your very focused work, a lot of thinking, and just that's your best work. So how much autonomy do you want? Do you want to be part of a rockstar team, but they also will challenge and push you and change everything? Or do you want to be more sort of a really kind of an individual contributor by themselves? There's obviously a spectrum, but something to consider for yourself. The other thing is the fourth thing is growth. So I look at growth as just something that's super essential to me personally to kind of fuel my mental, my emotional, my intellectual sort of spirit. And so what is growth? I look at it as sort of opportunities for technical, managerial, just anything that really makes you kind of have more skills, if you will, right? More insights, more contributions, more market value, whatever you want to call that. And I think one thing that's really underrated is on-the-job learning. So when you're looking at an opportunity, some people go and they're really good at like taking courses or doing degrees on the side or whatever certifications. But I think there's something that's kind of underrated is on-the-job learning. Just and especially for us, for sales engineers, right? I think when you're interacting with customers, you're getting that real feedback about how they're using technologies, how they're using your products, what challenges they're running into. There's a lot of that real world experience about technology, how systems engineering, architecture, things that are just not it's very difficult to obtain those academically. And so I think, again, on-the-job learning is something that I personally look at a lot as a value. But again, there's other things that you can look at for you. But all of them, I think, fall in this bucket of growth. Okay, and so the last one is compensation. Last but not least, as it were. Obviously, compensation is part of the 5, but it's last for a reason. I think to me, it sort of almost underlies the other 4 points we talked about. So I'm not, this sort of funny image here of pay me. It's obvious, right? You're doing a good job. You want people to pay you. The question that I'm more concerned about is how do you look at compensation as it relates to the other 4 points? And I think of them as sort of knobs, right? So you have compensation knob, you have these other 4 knobs, and you can dial them into different combinations, right? You can increase compensation, but maybe that has an effect on the other 4 knobs, right? So it sort of underlines those 4. A bigger paycheck, it won't fix your burnout, right? A bigger paycheck might have strings attached to it that might compromise any of the other 4 things that are important to you. It might seem right in the moment, but wrong in the long term. And, again, I can attest to that from a personal perspective. I was at a company, very unhappy, very good pay, but I was just miserable day to day. I had to leave and take a 30% pay cut, but for the next 4 years, that was like the best. Every day I was excited to go to work. It was the best 4 years ever, right? So that's an example of dialing down compensation, but then having other levers that you can justify to yourself why that makes sense. Another example you can think of is just more generally like a teacher, right? Somebody who's, I don't think teachers are necessarily motivated by compensation, right? I don't think that having doesn't equate always to having a more fulfilling career. Teachers love teaching; they love interacting with young minds, right, and filling them with knowledge and passion. Is it the highest paid profession? Probably not, right? But people still gravitate towards because that's what they want to do. So again, that's just an example of dialing compensation to the right level. And again, Alex, we talked about this, right? This is not static. It's not something that set in stone for you. That's part of the framework, is thinking like, okay, contextually, where am I in my life? What stage am I in? Okay, did I just have kids? I need that stability. Okay, great. But what am I going to do once the kids are older? Where am I going after this? Or I need that money for this. But so what's the plan, I guess, is the point, is to consider compensation in the makeup of these other things. So that's my 5 things. Alex, did you have any comments or thoughts? I think we're almost out of racetrack here.
Yeah. Thanks again. For me, this was when we went through this, I was just racing, man, thinking, man, I wish I had met Roman 8 years ago when I started my career. I don't know if you guys can see me now. And so I was thinking of Roman, when you shared this last week, you made me think of a number of my friends, and I'm like thinking, how can I apply this framework to them? I know like a common, I know we have a lot of seasoned pre-sales professionals on this, so maybe this skews towards more of a younger personnel. Maybe this is timeless, but for my friends who came to mind, how would you map this framework to someone who's only really thought of their job as the last lever, compensation? Like, how would you shift that paradigm? It took you 4 years to do that.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think, look, I think it's tempting to think of this as sort of advice for newcomers to the profession, but I think, I mean, people can be the judges of this, and I'm happy to hear about that in the Q&A. I think whether you're in the beginning, middle, or later part of your career, there's always room for introspections, because you're still, like, your life still goes on, right? Like, you still have many, many more years ahead of you. And so if you're focused on the long term, so the end game, right? How do I maintain my happiness, throughout my career, post my retirement? What are the investments that I'm making today? First of all, you won't necessarily look at this as a job. It's kind of a cliche thing to say, but I think you will have some structure, some framework to evaluate different opportunities. It might not be the same framework that I have, but I think taking that step back and having that meta conversation of why I need a framework, that's one of my main points, right? You're in charge, right? But you have to sit down. It's not automatic. You're not going to discover sort of, as Plato would say, truth would not come from above, right? Which is that reference, that piece of art. You have to do the work, right? And I think that's just to kind of, I think, wrap it up. I have this really interesting quote here. I don't know if people know or can guess who this quote is from, but I think it really summarizes the essence of the talk, right? You're on your own, right? You know what you know, and you are the one who'll decide where to go. For those who don't know it, or maybe it's not obvious, this is a Dr. Seuss quote. I just happened to come across it. Just a quick story about it. There's actually a bunch of, I never read this book before as a kid. There's a bunch of articles on my feed like a couple of years ago about like these random Dr. Seuss books being banned. And I was like, oh, like, what's this? I have to get me one of these like banned books, right? I get this book. This book is called The Places You'll Go. I started reading it with my daughter. I think a lot of it was over her head at the time because she was like 2.5, 3. I came across this quote and I was like, oh, this really captures sort of the essence of what I've been trying to kind of tell in these presentations. So hopefully it resonates with you as well and you enjoyed it. Alex, thank you so much. And I think this is the end. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Roman. I think we'll just give it a second to see if any questions pile in. Roman, why they're doing that? What's the smallest company you worked at?
I think it's my household is the smallest. I think the smallest company was probably maybe like 30 or 40 people at the time. So it looks like Samantha has a question. How can you use this framework to help your immediate team improve job quality today? So that's a good question. And Samantha, thank you for that. So I think this framework is really focused on yourself, right? And I think by being more clear about what you want, your boundaries, the things that you enjoy doing, you will bring the best to the team, right? So I think if you want to relay something to others, that's great. But ultimately, this is really focused on yourself, sitting down and figuring out like your own framework, right? Your own values, really, your own things that you want to do. And ultimately, like that's the reason you will be happier long-term is because you'll be doing the best work that you can, right? And that will have impact on your team and your job ultimately. It's a long-term, sort of strategy, right? It's a long-term bet, if you will, for the end game. So, immediate team, improving job quality. I'm happy to kind of, hopefully that answers the question, but I can clarify if you want in a follow-up.
Looks like there's thanks, Ron. Looks like there's another one from Sicily.
Yeah.
What were can you say that? Yeah, what were the differences in the SC role working at small, medium, and large size companies?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Cicely. I think, I don't think this is earth-shattering, but I think working in a small company, you're more than just a sales engineer, and you're sort of in this chaotic mess, for better or for worse, right? So you have tons of opportunity. You can pretty much do whatever you want. There's really little to no process. So all your successes get a spotlight shined on them, But also that is also true for failures, right? So when you fail, when the company fails, everybody sees that it was you, right? You're like very hands-on in terms of anything that you touch. I remember we had like, and just access to production systems and just things that are just like, now that I'm thinking back on it, I'm like, this is completely crazy, right? Customer data, so just like a bunch of different things from that small company kind of vibe. A lot of good opportunities to learn. I think the larger companies have more structure, but they also have bigger teams. You have less maybe opportunities to spotlight your individual contributions. If you're working on a big deal, there's 20, 30, 40 people. What is Cecily's specific contribution? What is Alex's specific contribution? Would the deal move forward with or without you, right? If you just checked out, right? So those are some of the things that kind of we wrestle with, I think, as individuals. How important are we to this deal? Like, are we doing something interesting, right? I think that's my lens of looking at them. And I think the org size is like one dimension. It's also the company, the product that you're selling, right? Are you selling a SaaS? Are you selling a cloud, right? So there's different approaches there that kind of have more nuance.
That's a really great answer. Thanks. I really like the question of what's would this deal close with or without me? Yeah, that's. I mean, it's probably involves a lot of guesswork. It's hard to know, but I think you probably have a general sense. So David, go ahead. Sorry.
And I think, and again, yeah, the smaller the team, right? You are the deal, right? There's nobody else. You're the finance guy. You're the sales ops guy, right? You're the, you're putting the deal together, and if you're troubleshooting deployments, right? So that's like your life as a person in a small company. Again, in a larger setting, right? There's just much more rigor, much more structure, and some of it's good, right? Like regulation wise, in terms of separation of customer data, access to different things, right? The process. So not all of it is bad necessarily, because a lot of it is helping you, stay protected in a sense. But, that's at least one way of looking at the difference.
Awesome.
Okay, looks like there's another question from David.
Yeah. I'll read it out for the audience. What type of impact in general do you talk about with your team at Google Cloud? Is it different for each team member?
Yeah, thanks, David. I think without going into too many details, but I think specifically for us, cloud, Google Cloud specifically has changed quite a bit. I think I started there in 2019. At that time, it actually felt a little bit more of like a smaller startup, which is really crazy because our first sales kickoff, it was like, literally a couple of hundred people. And then the last sales kickoff this year, it was like tens of thousands of people. So they literally hired like, I don't know, 10,000 people basically over a couple of years, which is absolutely crazy. So imagine kind of that in the context of Cecily's previous question. But I think impact used to be defined as deals, right? So getting deals, bookings, etc. I think now the emphasis is much more on revenue, and you can kind of tell that from the fact that Google Cloud is now publicly being reported as part of the Alphabet revenue, right? So the emphasis is on revenue, on consumption, which is what the cloud business is, right? It's a consumption business. So the emphasis is on consumption, on revenue from that perspective. I think and then I think the other aspect of your question, each team member, we have very similar roles. I think Google just likes to call some roles in different names. So my role is a customer engineer. It's really a sales engineer, right? It's called something else in other cloud providers, but everybody's got sort of their like domain of expertise, right? And then they kind of work with their customers to execute. But ultimately, I think we have that, consumption and customer sort of satisfaction as the two kind of main things that we think about.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Roman. If you don't mind unsharing your screen. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you. Guys, Roman's very friendly. Reach out to him if you have any questions. If this is marinating later on and you want to see, get a copy of the framework or asked how he used it, definitely recommend reaching out. The next session, The next, so yeah, you guys have 30 minutes or so. There's a couple of different sessions available in your chat. In your track. So yeah, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in half an hour.
Awesome. Thanks everybody.